So good morning all. So today we are discussing the process models. In process model, there are various process models. So we are discussing the all the process models like specialized, prescriptive, generic process model. Already we have discussed in last lecture generic process model, but we will discuss the brief software engineering process cycle. So what are the uh, various models which required or with specific purpose that we will discuss today. So generic process model, yeah. In last lecture we discussed the generic process model. The communication, planning, modeling, construction and deployment. That is CPM CD. The cycle we have discussed. The communication, it states communication between the customer or stakeholder for the purpose of requirement gathering. That means when we communicate with your customer, that time you will get the correct customer requirement. So communication phase is most important for the basic start of your software engineering. So next is the planning. In planning, you have to schedule your plan. That means your software engineering work. You have to plan with the consist of technical tasks, resources, work product, and you have to schedule that particular work. Next is a modeling. Modeling, it consists of analysis and design. Now what we have to analyze? We have to analyze the customer requirement. Okay, in concern of your technical aspects. So whatever requirement of the customer you have to describe in a detail, and you have to design that customer requirement into the any specific model or any specific module that you have to the ex- architecture of your software. So that is the part of your modeling. If you consider like next stage is the construction. In construction, there is a two basic stage like coding and testing. So in coding, also we have to program your uh, implementation of your design. That should be part of coding. And testing is to check whether flow of coding is correct or not. That type of one testing. Whatever you have to implement it, that should be give the correct result or not. That means checking of error of your program, that should be part of your second test. Okay, so in test you have to consider these 2 points. But let's take a one example of testing. In C programming, how we can test your program? We have to add the watch. Okay, by the step by step execution, we can get the values of your variable in the concern of your register. So this type of testing you need to do the in programming. So next part is the deployment. Now everyone know the deployment, that is the software delivery, and you have to take feedback from customer also. So in deployment, it involves deployment of small programs, its creation of large programs, and deployment of large system-based programs. So these are the 5 generic framework activities to the umbrella activity. But these activities will be generic framework for all models or all process models. So this generic process framework must be understood in the proper way. Okay. So next, software requirement analysis. We already discussed that modeling. In software requirement analysis, whatever customer requirement you have to understand, then and then you can solve the proper customer satisfaction or whatever. If we doesn't get the requirement, you cannot implement the good product. So that means what customer wants, you have to understand in the concern of your customer requirement. Okay. Next is a traditional process model. Now in traditional process model, it's a one good approach for the process model in concern having like In generic process model, this what are the steps you have taken, like communication, planning, modeling, construction, deployment? That process must be followed on dependent case. So in traditional model, that activities will be taken away. So in prescriptive process model, that prescriptive process model, the all software organizations describe the unique set of framework activities in their own development process. But in general, it should adopt all the generic framework activities in the set of tasks defined in the generic process model. So whatever process model chosen by the organization, it should be encompassed in the framework activities that we already discussed: communication, planning, modeling, and construction and deployment. So now why it is called as a prescriptive? Because prescriptive is given a fixed model that prescribes the state of activities. So that we call as a prescriptive model. It means give the prescribe the workflow of your model, workflow of your system. So that should be prescriptive model. Now workflow, that means it defines the flow of process of elements. Means in the concern of data flow, in the concern of control flow, it should be the manner which they are interrelated. So all generic framework activities are defined, but each descriptive model put a different purpose of this generic framework activity. So that should be the your part of prescriptive model. Now in prescriptive models, there are four type of models. First is a waterfall model that we called as a linear. Second is a incremental. Third is a evolutionary, and last is a specialized process model. So we will discuss one by one in sequentially. So first is a waterfall model. In a screen, you have to see the diagramical structure of waterfall model. So in communication, the waterfall model is also called as a linear sequential model or classic life cycle of software engineering. So in this diagram, we have given the basic steps that will be implemented in a software process model. Okay, so in a linear sequential model, we will discuss communication. Communication means project initiation. That means requirement gathering. Now, how it will be required gather? Requirement gathering is having the different parts, like your communication with customer, or we will communicate by the expertise, then we will get the specific ideas for the any software development of any software. So the software development process starts from communication between the customer and developer. Okay, so according to waterfall model, the customer must take all requirements at the beginning of project. So whatever requirement you have to implement, that should be firstly collected from communication or from start of your project. Okay, so that means all requirements you have to take at the start of your project. Then it includes the planning. Now planning having the complete estimation of your project. Now in estimation, it's like your costing, it's like your scheduling, it's like your tracking, tracking of your all phase of your project. Okay, so in planning, you must consider the cost, you must consider the how or in which month you have to complete your project. Also, you have to track all the activities. So that should be part of your planning. Next, modeling. Now in modeling, we already discussed, but in concern of waterfall model, it includes the detailed requirement analysis and project design, like your algorithm. Also, it having the flow chart of your models or flow chart your requirements. In flow chart, It shows the complete pictorial flow of your program, whereas algorithm is the step-by-step solution of your problem. So that should be designed in the concern of your modeling. We can also design the architecture. So architecture having the data flow and control flow of your software. So next part is the construction. Now in construction, the two phase is required, that is coding and testing. In concern of waterfall model, the design details are implemented using the appropriate programming language, that should be coding, and testing. Testing is carried out to check whether flow coding is correct or check out the error program. Okay, so that should be part of your construction, means actual implementation and actual verification, that should be do in a construction phase. Now last phase, the delivery. So deployment, which having the software delivery, supports and feedback from the customer. So if customer suggests some correction or demands in additional capabilities, then changes are required for such correction or enhancement. So that should be part of your waterfall model. Okay. Now in a waterfall model, whatever we have discussed, that means first and most important part is all requirements collected initially. After the or within a development life cycle, not any requirement will be taken. So, okay, that is the most important part of waterfall model. Now we will discuss the advantages and disadvantages. If you consider that structure of any design model, the CPM/CD is a common, but how it will be giving the structure for that particular model, that should be the different. So that we will discuss in advantages and disadvantages of a particular model. So advantages of waterfall model: it is easy to understand and use, but systematic and sequential approach of software development model. It is very easy to manage since all the requirements are very well understood in the beginning itself. So it is easy. So now disadvantages. Now in disadvantages, the problem in this model remain uncovered until the software testing. If we up to testing you don't understand the what is the exact problem. So up to testing you have to wait for the all the verification of customer requirement. Now, one of the disadvantages of this approach is the blocking stage. Now, blocking stage means when the number of development team waits for the other members, that time we have to dependent on other tasks. That means after completion of one task, then and then the next team will be ready for the development, or next will be team ready for the do the activity. So that is the dependency. Okay. So this is the most important drawback of this model. Okay. So this model also step by step, systematic and sequential approach. So ultimately customer gets working of version of software is too late, because it doing the complete activities or complete requirement implement by the once. So it will do the late for the development of project. Okay. It also does not incorporate with the risk assessment. And finally, it is useful for small projects only, not where requirement as well as understood beginning only. So that should be the part of your waterfall model. So these are the description. Oldest software lifecycle model is understood the by the upper management user when requirements all understood and risk is very low. The workflow is a linear and sequential. That should be already we have discussed. That is the problem. It doesn't support the iteration. Changes can use cause the confusion. Difficult for customer set all requirements explicitly upfront. Okay, so that are the problems or disadvantages. Now waterfall model with the feedback diagram. In each stage we will take the feedback. How it will be taken, that should be given in the screen. Now next is the incremental process model. Now incremental process model, it consists a limited set of customer requirements are implemented quickly and delivered to the customer. That means whatever requirements you are gathered in between that, so some requirements you have to implement very quickly and it will be delivered in a very fast manner. So that means this is the one cycle or one part of your project that should be implemented in a very fast manner, so that will be customer can take the that particular one version, then modified and expandable requirements are implemented by the step by step, then other requirements will be implemented step by step. So actually, in this approach, the overall functionalities are split into the small modules, and these modules are quickly developed and delivered. So that is the most good approach of incremental model. In this approach, initial requirements are very well defined. Each increment is passed through the overall development cycle, phases of classic life cycle that we already discussed. Okay, so this incremental model having the two types. First is the incremental model and second is the RAD model. So in a screen, we have discussed that is the first type, that is the incremental model. Okay, the incremental model combines the element of waterfall model and applied in a iterative fashion. The first increment is a generally core product. That means in a screen we have to see the increment first. In first increment, we have to develop that core product. In increment 2, in increment 3, there is enhancement and advance some features we are including that particular product. So that should be the one basic part of your incremental model. So we will take one example. Suppose we have to implement the Microsoft Word. So that time in a Microsoft Word, what are the activities we are doing? We are typing the text. We are adding the open save activities. So we are adding the spelling and grammar checking. Okay, we are editing or we are adding the rules and margin to the particular page. Also we are adding the layout of that particular page. Okay, so now in this Microsoft Word implement of that word in that type, if we consider the first increment, in first increment what we will do, we will implement with some management functions like new, open, save, etc. Okay, so that should be the your basic Microsoft Word. And second increment, what we will do, we will edit that document. Okay, we will add the ruler, margins, and multiple sections to be or like your header, footer that will be added in a second increment. In third increment, what we will add? We will add grammar checking, auto correction of particular word. Okay, so that type of phases or that type of increment will be added in a particular project or particular software development life cycle. So next we will discuss the advantage and disadvantage. It is advantage, it is a useful when the size of development team is a small, because in each increment we will implement the small activities. So each team will be busy for the entire software development life cycle. If a product satisfies the client, then size of team will be increased. So also increments can be properly planned to the handle by all type of technical tasks. So that should be one important advantage. Next, The initial product delivery is the faster and cost of development is the very low. Basic of your software it will be the faster. So next is the demerit and disadvantages. The cost of finished product may be increased because we are doing the various increment, we are doing the various cycles. So for that purpose the cost of product will be increased. Next we will discuss the RAD model. So these are the incremental description. Okay. In a RAD model, that is Rapid Application Development Model, it considers like it implement or develop your product in a very short period of time, almost within a 60-90 days, we have to implement that RAD model. That means fastest adoption of waterfall model. Okay, so we will discuss in the what will be do the activities in a communication. It understood the business problem and information for the software. In the planning, since various teamwork hit together different modules simultaneously plan the important part of development process cycle. In modeling, it will be categorized like your business modeling, data modeling, process modeling. In business modeling, information flow among the different functions that will be considered. In data modeling, it includes the different data objects that will be used in a software. And process modeling. During the process modeling, the process description are created. That means, for example, add, modify, delete. Okay, in construction, it also takes the phases like component reuse, automatic code generation, because we have to implement very fastest adoption, okay, or fast implementation in RAD model. So it will reuse your component like reuse of your code, okay, automatic code construction like your whatever means API we will be included in your project, that is automatic code generation, and testing will be carried out at the time of your development. You know, advantages and disadvantages. Advantages is like your you see the very short period of time we can implement. It will be increase reusability of component and it results to the minimal code writing in the case code generation. Okay, now we will discuss the evolutionary process model. In evolutionary process model, the in this process model, it also iterative type of model. Okay, using this process model or this model, the developer can develop increasingly more complete version of software, and each version is refined based on the feedback till it is a complete. Means this cycle will be do again and again till the feedback or customer will not satisfy. Okay, so the evolutionary process model having the three type of models: prototyping model, spiral model, and concurrent development model. In a screen, there is a prototyping model. Now, prototyping model it having or it offers the best approach for the human-machine interaction. Ideally, prototypes serve as a mechanism for identifying the software requirements. The prototyping approach is often called as a throwaway prototyping. Now, prototyping it means like you have to create one prototype of your software, and in a prototype we will check and verify whether the requirements will be completed or not, and if not then we add again all the requirements. Also we can add the advanced enhancement to the particular software. If we take the one example of prototyping like WhatsApp, so there in a each month or each year, the prototyping of that software, the new feature will be added. That means not completely done the implementation of WhatsApp. day by day they are adding the advanced feature, so that should be part of your prototyping. The different phase of prototyping, like communication. In a communication, the software prototyping paradigm starts with the communication between developer and customer, and it defines the overall objective of the desired software and identify its requirement. Next is the quick design or quick planning. Okay, now in a planning, quick design focuses on these aspects software that are visible to the customer. It includes the clear input-output format and human-machine interface. Okay, so that should be part of your quick modeling. Now, quick design. What is quick design? The models of a software is now built on gives the clear idea of software. It enables the developer to better understand the exact requirement. Now, construction of prototype. The concept of modeling the quick design leads to the development of prototype. This construction prototype is developed by the customer and evaluated by the customer itself. That means in a construction, when you start for the development of design or model any particular function, that time we have to understand the customer requirement or customer will be evaluated whatever you have to implement it. That means in the presence of customer you can verify that your prototype. Now, deployment and delivery, we already discussed the concern regarding your deployment and delivery. Build is very clear. Customer can give the suggestion and feedback. Advantages: prototype makes the requirements more and clear. For system is a more transparent. But disadvantages: software developer is generally compromise in a quality to get working prototype is quickly. Okay, so sometimes incorporate operating system or programming language may be selected. So sometimes we have to it will be implemented by the cycle by cycle. So we have to select the proper framework. We have to select the proper programming language. Okay, these are the description that we will discuss. Now next is a spiral model. Now in a diagram we have to categorize that CPM CD cycle into the section that should be your spiral model. So you don't know the spiral, how it will be create that. So that type of modeling in the concern of software in development model. So spiral model combines all well-known waterfall model and iterative prototyping. Combining these two models, it will be its rapid development of more complete version of your software. The spiral model can be adopted to apply throughout the entire life cycle. Application from concept development and maintenance. The spiral model is divided into the set of framework activities, each defined by the software engineer team, and each framework activity represents one segment of a spiral model. That segment will be shown in a diagram. You can see on the screen. The initial activity is shown from the center of circle and developed in a clockwise direction, and each spiral of a model includes the communication, planning, modeling, construction and deployment. Okay, so that should be part of your software development cycle. So these are the description when spiral model will be invented in 1988. Dr. Barry. So weakness of general evolutionary process model. Prototyping poses the problems for the project planning. Okay. So because it combines the iterative and waterfall models. If too fast, the process will be fall into the or slow. If too slow, productivity could be affected. Now, some specialized process model like your component based process model. Now, component based process model it consists of following state available component based product are researched and evaluated for the application domain. The component integration issues are to be considered. The software architecture designed and accommodated the component and components are integrated into the architecture. Like when you develop any software, that time you have that time whatever process model we will discuss, that process model will be considered as a sequential step by step development the customer requirement. But in a component based model you have to focus on whatever components we require, and that component integration that should be the part of your development model, or that should be the part of your software processing model. That means it based on your component, the all the functions will be implemented with the concern of your components which are related to your architecture. Okay. Now next is the in a component some parts of component model. The component based model it will be developed has many characteristics of spiral model. It also evolutionary in a nature. It includes the iterative approach of software development. Modeling and construction activity begins with the identification of the candidate component. So this model compensates the application from pre-packaged software component from the existing software model. The component-based development includes the some steps like your available component-based product are researched and evaluated the application domain. Component integration issues are also considered. Software architecture is designed into the accommodate and accommodate that component, and components are integrated to the combined architecture. So testing are carried out to check the functionality. If we consider the advantages, it supports the reusability and there is a reduction of development cycle time. It also significant increase the productivity. Now formal methods of the model. Formal methods it includes the set of activities that leads to formal the mathematical specification of the computer software. Formal method is like your development of formal method is currently quick, time consuming, expensive because few software developer having the necessary background applying the some mathematical calculation which is required for the communication mechanism and technically unsophisticated to the customer. Okay, next we will discuss the unified process model. Now, unified process model. The object-oriented models and programming language are widely used in a software development. Nowadays, if we consider any development of software, that time object-oriented framework or object-oriented methods will be used in that particular software development cycle. So for that purpose, the object-oriented analysis like OOA and object-oriented design methods are to be proposed in object-oriented software development. Okay, so object-oriented process models are similar to the evolutionary models are used to new paradigms for the software development using object-oriented language, like we can call as the UML. UML, that is Unified Modeling Language. The UML provides the necessary technology, supports object to enterprise the practice, but doesn't provide the process framework to guide your particular project team for their application of the technology. On a screen in 1990s, when object-oriented language are gaining or widespreadly used, that time the object-oriented analysis and design methods are proposed for the development of cycle. So UML is a very robust notation for modeling and development of the object-oriented system. In a UML means representation of your software. Okay, so what is exact use of UML? UML is a representation of your software process. Means you have to implement the use case diagram or flow structure of your particular software that will be represented by the UML. UML is a very easy to use. UML does not provide the process framework. It only gives the necessary technology for object-oriented development. UML consists having five phases: inception, elaboration, construction, transition, and production. That should be the most important part. So UML, it draws the best feature and characteristics of conventional software process model. Now these are the phases of UML. Phases of UML. First start inception. Now inception, it includes the customer communication planning activities like your communication. Okay, in communication, what we will do, that should be some part of your inception. It also includes the understand the requirement and better use case diagram will be developed. That means it also some part of your planning. Okay, so that should be consider it understand the requirement better and use case diagram. Use case diagram shows the relationship between the various actors. So that should be the phase of inception. Next is the elaboration. Now elaboration phase, it gives the customer communication and modeling activities of generic process model. Elaboration refines and expand the use case developed in a inception phase and expand architectural representation. It includes the model like your use case model, analysis model, design model, implementation model, and deployment model. That means whatever modeling you are doing, that should be considered in the elaboration phase. Next is the construction phase. Now in a construction phase, you will very well know the in a construction what we will do. We will code or we will implement that requirement. We will implement that design. In a transition phase, during this step, software is a given end user and beta testing. Okay, transition is the part of some deployment. It will give the beta testing. Now user can report that defect and necessary changes. So we can develop again, create all necessary information regarding the development of software cycle. Okay. Now last is the production. Production is like your deployment. Okay. During the phases, the ongoing use of software monitoring support for operating environment is provided. Defect reports and request changes are to be submitted or evaluated. Now during this time of construction, transition and production phase are prepared for the next increment is to be started. Okay, so that type of unified processing will be done. Now here is the we will discuss in each step in a described manner like inception phase, elaboration phase, whatever models we discuss that will be listed here or some description written for the students. This should be construction phase, transition phase. In transition phase, we already discussed the beta testing and customer feedback also. In production, deployment of generic process. Now, unified process work product. Okay, so today we will stop here and thank you all of you.